have Parkinson's disease and I am a PD Avenger. This is Coffee with Tim, a conversation of life and Parkinson's. Well, welcome to Friday. To all those of you who are joining us, if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're on Facebook, give us a thumbs up and a like. It's all great things to help us have others find out where we're at and what we're doing. If you're enjoying our conversation. This morning is brought to you by the Parade for Parkinson's, a 5th year birthday celebration for U-Turn Parkinson's, a wellness center here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. www.uturnpd.org and find out how you can empower our pursuit of wellness. So make sure you say hello in the chat if you're here. I've got a fascinating guest with us this morning. We're going to be talking to Linda Olson, author of the best-selling book, at least in my opinion, entitled Gone, a memoir of love, body, and taking back my life. Linda lost both legs above the knee and her left arm, her right arm rather, back in 1979 in a literal train accident. And that's all I'm going to tell you at this point. I'm going to let her tell us most of the story as we get into it this morning. I just want to say good morning, Rosemary, Ken, good morning. Glad to see you guys. I see there's a few with us so far. Give people a chance to sign in and say hi. And my meds to kick in, and I'll stop shaking here in a little bit. But I don't want to wait too long. I'm anxious to talk to Linda here. We'll get started, and those who are late, well, they'll have to catch us on a rebound here. But welcome, Linda.
Hi, Tim. Thank you
Good
so
morning.
much for...
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. And we met back at WPC, World Parkinson's Congress in Kyoto, correct? No, not Kyoto.
Portland.
Portland, way back. And it was very brief. We shared the same stage together, as I now recall. And when I was reintroduced to you, I was like, Linda who?
Well, you're more famous than me, so I knew who you were. It was cool. It was very nice to reconnect with you. Well, that's because you wrote a book before I did, and it's a good book. So,
well, thank you. Thank you. Here, we'll do it together. We'll promote one another's books together. There we go. 2 great books, folks. If you haven't read them, you need to get them. All right. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here this morning, Linda. I loved your book. I love your story. I love the story of you and David, your husband. I love the fact that you have written about a love story in the midst of, consider, a tragic event that I would dare say that most human beings wouldn't have managed a fraction as well as you have. And I absolutely loved your book. I've told my listeners many times that I'm a very fussy reader, which just basically means I'm a poor reader. I get lost very quickly. Most of the books on my shelf still have pieces of paper tucked in them, you know, at the quarter point, the halfway point. Yours I burnt through in a week because I just found the story absolutely fascinating. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from you this morning, but let's say hello to a few people. Janice Horn, good morning. Geraldine, good morning. Dorothy Gillis, good morning. It's nice and rainy here in London, Ontario. Well, you know, Winnipeg, we woke up to snow. I kept telling my friends and family, I said, it's going to happen. You know, it's too early. We've had a beautiful summer, or winter rather. We've had a beautiful spring. It's way too early here for spring. Typically, off around the edge, but we've had snow for weeks. And we woke up this morning to completely covered. So, but let's get into this conversation with Linda. Linda, tell me about your story. It started back in Germany. My hat this morning I bought in Germany. It's in respect to that fact. So tell us a little bit about your story and how it started.
Well, back in 1979, my husband and I decided it was time to take a vacation. His dad was a career Navy officer, and he and his mom were stationed in Stuttgart, Germany. So his brother and wife and Dave and I and his parents decided to take a trip together, which started out to be a wonderful trip. In fact, it was the first day of our vacation, and we were in a van, a VW van that we had borrowed from somebody. And we had spent the morning traveling through southern Germany, Bavaria. And one of the last things that I ever did before the accident was we climbed to the top of the steeple of the cathedral in Ulm, U-L-M. It's the tallest cathedral steeple in the world, as I recall. And my husband and his brother are both marathon runners. So the three of us kind of ran up the stairs and had a great, kind of a little bit of a competition. And had a nice lunch and got in the car to drive up to Berchtesgaden, Germany, which was Hitler's Eagle's Nest, I think is what it was called, where
Right.
he used to
Right.
go.
Beautiful country, right?
Oh, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And as we were going along, we got up into the mountains and we stalled on the railroad track. And
You
my
stalled on
father,
the railroad track.
yes, as my father-in-law was driving at the time, and there was just no time to think. As soon as the van stopped, there was a train coming, and this train came around a corner and it was going fast.
There were no lights. There was no bar down. There was none of
There
that
was
stuff.
there was no bar, there were lights, and it's debatable as to whether they were working or not. But between
Oh
you and
my
me,
God.
sure, it would not have made much of a difference. This was a very small, narrow, windy road, and when you get up there,
Yeah.
if you stall, you stall. It doesn't matter whether the
Yeah.
lights were on or not.
There's
But
not
the
much
men
places to go on those little roads.
there weren't. Yeah, it was kind of like it was the only flat place on the road that we'd come to, and it's just happened to be where the car came to a stop, as you'll see later in the book. But we won't talk about that part yet. The men were in the front of the van, and they all three got out quickly. They got out, both doors opened, and the women were in the middle seat. I tried to get the door open and couldn't. So I rolled over into the front seat, thinking I could just get out that door that was already open. And when I rolled over, I fell, and I fell onto the tracks. My husband, Dave, had just turned around about that time, and he could see me fall. And he ran as fast as he could, and he actually grabbed me and had me in his arms when the train hit the van.
Oh my
It
God.
threw us apart. And if you're thinking about a railroad track and a car crossing the tracks, that train just came and it just smashed into the van, and I fell back onto the tracks. When the train came to a stop, I was underneath the van. They backed the van up. They backed the train up. Everybody got off the train, and they came and pulled the van off of me. So if you can imagine the scene where you're out in the mountains and somebody pulls the van off the railroad tracks, and then I'm still lying there. And at that point, if you think about what happens to train track
Yeah.
accidents, they cause amputations. If they could cut your neck off, they could cut your head off, whatever is between them and the tracks. So what happened was my foot got cut off on the left, a portion of my leg got cut off on the left. One part was on one rail and the other was on the other. My arm also got cut off right there. And my right leg was severely damaged. They
Okay.
were
Can I just ask a quick question?
yeah,
Your mother-in-law and another woman was in the back seat.
when that train hit, it threw them into the back compartment of the van, which was where the luggage was. And when everything came to a stop, they were perfectly fine.
Oh
Somebody
my
opened
goodness.
they opened the back door and they got out, and they had a few bruises, but nothing. So there were 6 of us.
Wow.
I was the most severely injured. My husband actually got knocked out and he broke his ankle. And everybody else was fine. So it's freakish. It's, no reason for it. But
So the
anyway,
train ran over you, took your legs, and it actually took your arm right where it's.
right below the shoulder. I still have an intact shoulder, so that, it moves. I can do anything with it, but I just don't have that arm. So yeah,
Wow.
and my legs are off above the knee, about mid thigh, so they're
Okay.
reasonably short, but just long enough so that I could wear prostheses successfessly.
So now, did
But
you lose the legs in the accident, or did they have to come off further during surgery or infection
The
later?
left one was completely cut in 2 places. So it was transected right above the ankle and then above the knee. And the right one was so severely damaged that they had to complete the amputation at the hospital in Salzburg. So the good news about all this was they got an ambulance to us very quickly. They got me across the border into Salzburg, and they had a team of trauma surgeons waiting for me. There were 5 surgeons that knew I was coming, and they knew the extent of the injuries because they had been informed along the way. So they took me directly into surgery and cleaned out all the road rash. I mean, you can imagine the
Oh yeah.
cinders and everything that comes through there. And to be honest with you, I probably could never have been in a better part of the world to have had this happen because they were expert. It was a trauma hospital. That was all they dealt with. It was, industrial accidents or car accidents or whatever. And they were very, very meticulous. And I had
I
only
was going
one.
to ask about that because I was going to.
Yeah.
What went through my mind when I was reading the book was that 1979. It's not the Dark Ages, but it's certainly not today.
But you know what? It was Germany and Austria. And these were one of these guys was old enough to have been at the end of World War II. This was a part of Europe where they were so experienced with trauma. I mean, these people had lived through massive wars. It was a big part of their medical culture. In fact, their comment to us was that they thought we were lucky to have been in their country because the trauma system was much more developed. And they were correct because our trauma system here in the United States, in fact, I was kind of at the forefront of that here at UCSD, didn't get developed to the extent until it was in the 90s when we started putting it together, 80s and 90s. And here in San Diego, 2 of the surgeons that were prominent in that kind of got it going in the country. One of them's now the executive director for the the American College of Surgeons. So I'm glad I was in Austria because I got better care there and it was superb. So we were in the hospital in Austria for 3 weeks, waiting for the wounds to heal, and then medevaced back to the Naval Hospital here in San Diego because Dave was active duty Navy and was doing his residency in radiation oncology. That's the short version.
Have you ever wondered? I mean, that's a crazy story. That's absolutely amazing that you survived. Have you ever asked yourself, wondered why you survived?
I think I did early on. And, I am kind of a black and white person, so I don't perseverate on things like that very much.
Hmm.
But I think probably once I got back to the United States, I had the time to think about it. And I knew I was going to be successful at that point in my mind. My wounds were all healed. I was young. I was strong. I was pretty sure I could learn how to walk. And I thought, if there's any good that can come out of this, it's going to be that I can go have a normal life. So I was hoping that that was going to be my mission, was to be able to have a normal life and show people that they could be normal. And that was my number one goal.
You were how old?
I was 29, almost 30 when it happened. Yeah.
Almost 30. You and David had been married for how long?
Just about 2 years. Yeah.
About 2 years. So young married couple goes to Germany. Young wife loses both legs and an arm, and a few months later, she comes out thinking, well, everything's healed up. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to go have a normal life. That's pretty astounding for that age and that circumstance to come out with that kind of attitude. So tell me, were you ever angry? Have you ever been angry that you either survived, didn't survive with the injuries that you had, etc.?
Anger was something I thought about but didn't have enough energy for. It was very energy consuming to learn how to walk, to learn how to sit up, to learn how to do things with my left hand. I was busy. I was so busy that I was exhausted when night time came, and all I had time to do was work hard and go to sleep. And that sounds really Pollyannish, but it was true. Did I ever get angry? Yes. I got angry probably many times during the first year, and I remember specifically at the end of the first year, we were living here in San Diego, and I was in my wheelchair. I went around the side of the house and I just cried. And I didn't cry very often, but this one day I just let it all out.
Yeah.
And I thought, why me? And this shouldn't have happened. And I had so many things that I was going to do. I was going to be a doctor and We were going to have kids and have a wonderful life. And I stopped and I thought, I'm really lucky. It's been a year. Dave is still with me. He says he's not going to leave me. I've got the potential for a great job. Dave and I were medical student classmates together, so we had gone to medical school together. I was almost done with my radiology residency, and I had realized by then that a radiologist just needs your eyes, at least one hand, and so I could look at things and dictate, and that was the way radiologists worked at that time. That was before interventional radiology came along.
Right.
So I knew that if I could work, if my husband stayed with me, and if I could learn to walk, that I could do anything. I mean, that's what everybody else does. And that was the day that I realized that we were doing what everybody else did. And the only person that could make it fail at that point was me. So it was my job.
I want to talk about this guy, David. At 29 years old, he was, what, a year or two older than you at the time?
He's actually 2.5 years younger than me. So he was
2.5 years younger than you. So, oh yeah, I remember that now. Yeah. So he was quite immature for a male. At the time. Well, give me 1 second here, Linda, before I ask this question. I just want to say hi to a couple of people. Pat, good morning. Chuck, Diane, good morning. Glad you guys could join us. If you're joining in, we're talking to Linda Olson. Linda was in a train accident in Germany back in 1979, lost her right arm, both legs above the knee. And we will shortly here get to the story of the fact that she now also has Parkinson's disease. But we're in the midst of her story. She has survived. She's made it through hospital. And we have this incredible story in her book that she's written entitled Gone, about this man that she married, who at 27 years old made the decision that he would stay with this young wife who had been so battered and bruised by this train. And in reading her story, it's one of the things that stands out to me the most that I love, the fact that this relationship, this love, withstood this horrible moment in time. And I'm just amazed at David when he came to you, you write in your book, and he said, you know what? No, you called him. All right, how did it go? You tell me the story. I'm just going to do a parking moment here and screw it up. You tell the story properly.
Well, you can do yours and then I'll do my parking moment. I'm sure I'll have at least 2 of them along the way here today. The morning after the accident, he came into the ICU the first time he actually saw me since the accident. And he didn't know what he was going to see.
Yeah.
And I had been awake most of the night after the surgery, and I had decided that I would understand if he didn't want to stick around. I thought, this is not what he bargained for. He didn't bargain to be a caregiver for the rest of his life.
The first time he sees you, you give him the out.
I give him the out.
Look, buddy, if this isn't what you want, if this is too much for you, you can go. I understand.
You go.
Wow.
And he just looked at me and he took my hand in between his two and he said, Olsey, that's my nickname. My name is Olson. He always calls me Olsey. He said, I didn't marry your arms and your legs. If you can do it, I can do it.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
What do you do? What can you say if somebody says that to you? You just have to say, they threw the ball in your court and we're going to throw it back and we're going to, if we both stand by what we're saying right now, we can make this work.
That's amazing. I mean, so many guys, I think so many people would be, if not very tempted to leave, would probably leave. That's just an amazing testament to his character, to the promise that he made you on your wedding, that in sickness and health really meant something. And that, wow, that just really moved me.
Well, it's hard to believe that somebody really is going to follow through on that. So, I mean, I knew that he'd said that, and I knew him well enough by then. We'd known each other for 7 or 8 years by then. He's a very black and white person. He's a no-nonsense person. And I thought, he's not going to say that. He's not going to say something he doesn't mean. So it's my problem if I can't believe him. So I just kept thinking, okay, he said that. He said that. I believe him. And he never wavered. He never, ever wavered. He did all the things that he needed to start with for a while. I mean, he had to do everything. I was still learning how to use my left hand. And he intuitively figured out what needed to be done. And as time went on, he's carried me places. I've got in the book, I tell you about the first time we went camping. And in fact, can I show them the picture right now? Part of what he does is he carries me in a backpack. You can
Okay,
see
now hold that steady there for a minute so folks can actually see that. That's an old-fashioned backpack that David has taken, and he's configured it so that Linda can sit on it, and he carried her everywhere they went camping. Absolutely amazing. I think that picture, more than anything that I read in the book, spoke to the testament of the fact that he not only meant it when he married you, he meant it when he stood at your bedside, but then after the fact, he didn't just go home and curl up. He went home and said, how are we gonna make this work together? You love camping, you love backwoods camping, not just car camping, not easy stuff, but off the beaten track kind of camping, and he made it happen. Shocking to me.
The first big trip that we took was up to Yellowstone, and it was with my college roommate and her husband and their 2 children. So there were 8 of us. Our children were 5 and 8, and their children were 8 and 13. And we got in 3 canoes.
You're nuts.
We got into the south end of Yellowstone Lake. We were gone for 4 days. That end of the lake has no trails, no roads, and no motorized boats. So we were on our own. And they put me in one of the canoes with Roger. He was a big, strong smoke jumper ex-Marine type guy. And our son Brian, who was tiny. And there's a picture of him in the book. I mean, it's just the cutest little picture in the world. And we camped out there for 4 days. Well, I thought it was really important that I look normal. So I made sure I had my legs on. And I would not take those legs off until it was bedtime. So they would have to pick me up and sling me into the canoe and get me out of the canoe and get me to walk on the beach to where the camp was. And when we got done with that trip, I realized if we wanted to keep doing this, I needed to get rid of the legs, leave them at home, and using water transportation turned out to be the best way for me being disabled. So we would take trips that were on rivers or lakes. But this one got us started, and Dave realized we needed to be able to carry me. So he's a hunter. So he took one of his hunting backpacks that they would carry game out, and he modified it so I could sit in it. So the next time we went up to Quetico.
This just conjures all kinds of images of cavemen and their wives.
It is. That's why he loves it. He thinks that all men are jealous of him because everybody would love to be dragging their wife off into the wilderness. And the kids grew up going camping. Some of our trips were 10, 11 days, about 100 miles out and back, out all the way around a circuit, not back. But Quetico was the next big place we went, which is up above the Boundary Waters in Canada. And these are trips where in those 10 days, you might see 1 or 2 other groups of people, or just 1 or 2 people. So awesome places to be. And so our kids got to grow up in the wilderness, even though they're city kids. They grew up here in San Diego, but that's what I wanted to do before I was disabled. And then to be able to do that as a disabled person was just the pinnacle. That was what convinced me that we had achieved our goals. By then we had a family, we had jobs. And now the icing on the cake.
You both had your medical degree at that point.
Right.
You'd had 2 kids at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You go canoeing, 100-mile trek in a canoe, no legs, only 1 arm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people don't do this. Like you said, you'd go for these long trips and maybe see one other group. Most people don't do these things if they're able-bodied. And here you are out in the condition, I will say, that you are, taking your kids, 5 and 8 years old, and throwing them in a canoe, and off you go. That just terrified me out of my mind reading that. I was absolutely amazed. But you know what, Linda? It so speaks to me of the tenacity, the resilience, the perseverance, that willingness to stay in the game no matter what. And
well, you want to have fun. Isn't that what drives you a lot in the things that you did, Tim? I mean, what drove you to do your Trans-Canada race? What was the attraction?
Well, I wanted to prove I could do it. I wanted to get out and do something. I wasn't going to let Parkinson's define my life. At the time, I told Parkinson's, I'm gonna set the boundaries here. I'm the one that's going to say what can and can't be done.
you did the same thing I did. I mean, that's what all of us are doing with Parkinson's, I think. I mean, we're at a different end of our lives. We're older. I was 29. I was a lot stronger. And I had a group of friends and family who were strong, which we surrounded ourselves with. I mean, I think there's so many parallels between Parkinson's and my disability that I had a lot of practice. And so I kind of faced Parkinson's with, well, I hope it turns out to be as successful, although I know the end result is not going to be as successful as being an amputee, because being an amputee, you hit the bottom and you go straight up. Being Parkinson's, you kind of slowly go like this. But my goal is to have a good time while I'm doing that.
See, that's just a great attitude. So tell me, when were you diagnosed with Parkinson's?
6 years ago now. So I was 65 when I was diagnosed. I'm 71 now. So it was
so kind of the normal age to be diagnosed. How'd you feel about that when you got that diagnosis?
Well, Dave and I were sitting in the neurologist, and she said the usual, I'm not sure anybody says you have Parkinson's. I think they always kind of couch it and they say, I think you might have Parkinson's, which is pretty much all you need to hear before you think, oh, okay, this is shitty.
My doctor said, no, you have Parkinson's.
Oh, did they? Oh, yeah. So, and mine was not real obvious. My symptoms I still don't have a tremor, but
well, you don't have a tremor in. You only got one.
Exactly right. And I can't shuffle my feet. So it's kind of like, there's a lot of things it made my diagnosis hard. But I looked at Dave and I said, well, here's the good news. I can't fall because I'm already in a wheelchair. I can't shuffle my feet because I don't have any feet. And so far I don't have a tremor. And we're just going to figure out how to do this. So it was kind of, what else can you do?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you take it one day at a time, and again, you persevere. And my old definition of perseverance is carry on in your course of action, even in the face of difficulty, with little or no evidence of success. And that goes right back to the race where we sucked every day, and yet every day we got up and carried on our journey. And that's what you're talking about. Yes, you're given the diagnosis of Parkinson's. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to get up tomorrow and you're going to carry on your journey. Yeah. No matter what it looks like, no matter how tough it is, no matter how bad it is, whether it's a rotten day, you're going to carry on your journey. Get up the next day and choose to put a smile on your face. Choose that you're going to live your best. Choose that this life will be better than what Parkinson's would make it by itself. Yeah. And I think,
choosing every day whether you're going to be happy or not, because it takes a lot of energy for both. It takes a lot of energy to be angry or to be mad or to be sad. So you might as well just take it and use all of that you have to be happy. And it's hard to be happy sometimes, but
it's very hard to be happy some days. I've always told my wife right from the get-go, this is 37 years, I've always told her, I said, I don't think I was born with a happy gene. And now I think I wasn't born with enough dopamine.
But I was born with a happy gene. I'm one of those people that I was the way I am before I had that. So I know I had a little bit of a dose of that, and I'm grateful. But it doesn't make you happy all the time. So it just gives you one leg up, so to speak.
People often think that people often think that I'm like you, that I come with that natural happy disposition. Once you get to know me, hey Chuck, you'll find that that's not the case. I work at it. It's actual real work for me. I tend to be on the glass half full side often when I wake up in the morning. And it has to be a very deliberate choice to pick up my own book, to go back to my own message and say again, how are you going to choose to live today? So I don't say any of these things, and I want our listeners to know that we don't say any of these things lightly, because it is real work for some of us some days to get up and make that choice to be happy. But we can do it. Now, Geraldine wanted to know, how old are you? She said, may I ask how old you are now?
I'm 71, and I'm a happy 71. I wouldn't want to be 71. Thank you. That's very nice of you to say, Tim.
71 going on probably 31.
Yeah, parts of me.
Now,
every day it's a different part. Yeah.
Chuck asked, do you consider yourself disabled?
most of my career, most of my life as a mother and a wife and a radiologist, I did not think of myself as disabled. I think the past year or two, as Parkinson's gets a little bit more obvious, feel my disability a little bit more. But up until then, it's one of the reasons I didn't write a book. I mean, people have said for years, "Oh, Linda, you got to write a book. You got to write." I said, "No, I don't need to write a book. There's nothing to talk about. We're having a normal life. We've got kids. They do this." Um, so I think it just took a while for me to figure out that it was maybe not a normal life. Maybe it had been a little out of the normal. And then when I kind of connected with Parkinson's, when I was at that meeting with you, I said I wasn't going to go to that meeting. I wasn't turned down the invitation the first time. I said, I don't know enough about Parkinson's. I've only had it for a year or been diagnosed for a year. And I remember sitting on the stage with you and Brian Grant and the other guy, the guy from Australia or New Zealand that wrote the poem.
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
My very good friend, Mr. As soon as
Yeah,
we're offline here, I'll think of his name. But I see his
me
face.
too.
This is typical of my Parkinson's. That
Well, it's mine also.
Andy.
Well, I was
Andy McDowell.
Andy, yeah, and McDowell, yes, yes. Because I sat up there, I was the old lady grandmother up there, and you were the young dudes up there that had all dealt with Parkinson's in an incredible way. And I just remember thinking, we're at such opposite ends of the spectrum. But when I got done with that talk, people's reaction was
Phenomenal.
so unexpected to us,
Phenomenal.
that I thought this is a connection that needed to be made, because basically I've figured out how to do things, and I'm also one of these people that says every day is different with Parkinson's. There's every day I've got to figure out a different way to do things. You got the same thing. I mean, things just don't stay the same. So I felt like maybe I had a purpose now. And all those years before, when people said you should write a book, no. Now I feel like you and I have things we can show people because we want to still have as normal a life as possible, and we want to be happy. So we're going to keep working at it. So I mean, that's why I wrote the book finally.
I'm really glad that you waited to write your book, because it whole other depth of life experience and story to it that you wouldn't have had you wrote it early on. And I really appreciate all that. Someone's asking here, how old are your kids and what do they do now?
Well, my youngest child is 37 today, and he is finishing his surgery residency. Both my children went to UC Davis, University of California, Davis, for college. And both of them kind of did what their generation does. They wandered around a little bit. And he finally decided he should have gone to medical school. So he did. He is finishing a surgery residency, and he's looking at a job in Greenville, South Carolina today with his lovely bride, who's he met while he was doing his residency in Hawaii. And my daughter turned 40 2 weeks ago today, and she lives in Davis, California. She has a 14-and-a-half-year-old daughter. And my daughter works at UC Davis as an analyst and does statistical and outcomes and that, okay, here's my Parkinson's moment. Outcomes and analysis in the educational department. She loves numbers. Both my kids were water polo players, and that was another part that was fun of our life, was because they played such a rugged, aggressive sport. And here they had the mom who was so disabled, but, walked off and on the water polo deck from the swimming pools and stuff like that. So it was almost like, and my kids are not very big. My son is 5'8". My daughter's like 5'4". And my daughter still holds records in the NCAA for her scoring and stuff like that. So I think they got Dave's and my tenacity and our drive and our aggressiveness and assertiveness, and they've turned out to be wonderful kids. So they are what completed my life, and I'm glad Dave insisted on having kids. That's what made us normal. So
that sounds like a whole other story that we might have to come back to. So you may have just answered this question, but there's another question here by Evelyn Martinez that says, what makes you the happiest?
Every day it's a different answer to that. I would
I
say getting up and doing something, getting outdoors makes me happy. Doing things with my husband, seeing my children become themselves, um, and doing things to help people. I guess that's probably what drove me in medicine was being able to. I dealt with breast imaging. I was head of breast imaging at UCSD, so helping women with breast cancer, doing things that takes my mind off myself. I guess I hadn't thought of it that way before, but yes, doing things that doesn't let me think about being disabled or having Parkinson's disease.
love that answer because once again, it's about getting up every day and living life for what today is. There's not one go-to that makes it all. No panacea. But you get up every day and face that day and find happiness and joy in that day. That's just fantastic, Linda. Well, we are a little bit past the time I was shooting for, but I sure appreciate your story, Linda. I sure appreciate you coming and sharing with us. I think I could talk to you for hours on end. You bring an amazing perspective to life, an amazing perspective to dealing with your disability, and an amazing encouragement to those of us who have only Parkinson's. You've been,
God, I think it's only being an amputee. I think Parkinson's is a big deal, but
well, I think
whatever.
Parkinson's is a big deal too, but you've got two big deals in your life, and you deal with the both of them in an amazing way that is just extremely encouraging to all of us who have read your story and have had the pleasure to get to know you.
That's
Yeah,
because I get to do it with this man.
you got a huge support, and that is so important. We know that's so important in dealing with anything in life to have supports around us who will encourage us and help hold us up. So thank you to David for all that he's done throughout your marriage. Thank you to your kids, the support they've been to you. And thank you for being a part of the Parkinson's communities. Thank you for saying yes to WPC, for coming and sitting on that stage with us, for sharing your story of Parkinson's disease, because I have no doubt that you are going to be an incredible encouragement and support to all of us. So thanks for being with me today. I sure appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim. It's been delightful to get to reconnect with you. So let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. So don't go away. I'll come back after I close off
Okay.
here and we'll chat some
All
more.
right.
But just a couple of things that are being said here is thank you, Linda. Incredible, Linda. Thank you for sharing. Powerful. Thank you. Clearly something that's resonated with lots of our listeners today. So guys, thank you for tuning in today. We've gone a little bit longer than what we normally do, but that's fine. I thought you would enjoy Linda's story. And I do want to encourage you to go pick up her book because there's lots of things we, of course, didn't have the time to talk about today. You can find the book on Amazon. It's called Gone, a memoir of love, body, and taking back my life. I think that you will find that she doesn't talk a lot about Parkinson's in the book, but I think that you will find everything that she has to say is directly applicable to what we live with every day. And I believe it'll be a huge encouragement to you. So take the time to go pick it up, order it, and I think you will enjoy it. So remember, today is brought to you by Parkinson's, a celebration of the fifth birthday of U-Turn Parkinson's. Go to uturnpd.org and empower our pursuit of wellness. So have a great weekend, guys. Hug those you love. Live your best. Persevere, because this race, your race, can be won as well. Until next week, all the best. See you then. Bye-bye.